Previously we looked at the definition of knowledge and also definition of ignorance and some types of ignorance, and today we are going to look at the types of knowledge. So divide the knowledge into two types to start with. The first is what he called العلم الضروري, and the second is the one he called العلم المكتسب, and he defines both of them. So let's look at his definition. His definition is العلم الضروري ما لا يقع عن النظر والاستدلال أو استدلال، وما العلم المكتسب فهو الموقوف على النظر والاستدلال. Okay, so knowledge is, and obviously by knowledge I mean knowledge is divided in two types. That's ilm, yeah. Knowledge, al-ilm, is divided into two types. So that's al-ilm what he calls ad-daruri, and the other one he called al-ilm al-muktasab. So ilm al-daruri in English would be necessary knowledge or necessary proposition, and ilm al-muktasab will be acquired knowledge. We'll look at some other synonyms of these which are used in both usul fiqh and in mantiq. But let us look at the definition of ilm al-daruri, and their definitions are opposite of each other. So once we understand the first one, so every sort of knowledge in this sense, and by knowledge here we mean, contingent knowledge overall, like it's not the knowledge of God, for example. So what is al-ilm al-daruri? Al-daruri, necessary knowledge. So he defines necessary knowledge as ما لا يقع عن نظر واستدلال. ما لا يقع he means ما لا يحتاج here. ما لا يقع عن نظر واستدلال. So necessary knowledge is the type of knowledge which doesn't require to nazar, and he defined an-nazar as al-fikr, that is thought. And istidlal is, let's say, argument. So any knowledge which doesn't require thought and argumentation is necessary knowledge, but we still need to look a bit more closely on nazar and istidlal to understand this. So let's see that. So an-nadaru, so that's nadaru, wal fikr. So first we define another is thought. Okay, but what is thought? Then he defines al-fikru huwa harakatun nafs. It's the movement of your fil ma'qulat. So thought is the movement of yourself, yeah, inner self, or your mind, if you want to say that. So it's a movement of your mind, but a particular type of movements, a movement whose objects are ma'kulat. So objects are movement of thought whose objects are ma'kulat, that is non-tangible things, let's say that. So that would be universals, because all particulars are sensible things and they required movement. But a different sort of, so thought is basically is the movement of our intellectual mind, the movement of mind, and mind grasps the non-tangible things or universal. On the other hand, the other type of movement, harakatun nafsi fil mahsusat, so that's not, he's talking about the movement of yourself, movement which is concerned with al-mahsusat, tangible things. Or particular things. I mean, particular is not a good word, but anyway, what I mean is what is grasped by senses. So the movement of self or mind, whose object is intellectual things or universal, is called thought. On the other hand, the movement of yourself, whose object is tangible things, particular things, that is what we call at-takhayyul. Al-takhayyul. In English, we might translate it as imagination. So let's go back to now. So we know now what is nazar and what is thought. The other thing is istidlal. So what is istidlal? That is involved. Istidlal in Arabic language means to ask for, istidlal, to ask for evidence. That's what istidlal means linguistically. But here, what istidlal mean is, in a nutshell, I'll come to another. So terminologically, it means iqamatul dalil, to establish an evidence. I'll I'll look at different another definition as well, but to establish an evidence or the evidence, depending on. Okay, now so basically we can take another which is equal to al-fikr, and al-fikr is thought, and we define thought as the movement. Yeah, movement of self, so movement. And istidlal is basically another way of saying to establish evidence. And to establish evidence, you also need movement, especially if you are looking at the context of Aristotelian logic, movement, or logic in general, or mantik, movement of thought as well. So basically, what istidlal is in this context is inference or argumentation. Argumentation or process of reasoning. So that's istidlal. So now we're ready to go back and define our necessary knowledge, or al-daruri, al-ilm al-daruri, a bit more clearly. So necessary knowledge is any knowledge which does not require reflection, it doesn't require process of reasoning, doesn't require process of reasoning. And since in the context of Aristotelian logic, that process of reasoning was considered to be process of reasoning involve mediation, in the sense that you come from premises or premise, which are known as muqaddama or muqaddamat, and there is a mediation of what they call middle term. And then you get to conclusion. So that's the process. But it doesn't have to be regimented, but all process of reasoning or inferences generally require mediation. Your premise through some mediated thing to the conclusion you want to get. So if the process of reasoning is mediation, and if necessary knowledge is the one which doesn't require process of reasoning, That is, it doesn't require mediation. It just means that necessary knowledge is an immediate knowledge. Direct knowledge. You can call it intuitive knowledge. So that's what necessary knowledge is. Necessary knowledge is immediate knowledge. ضروري is immediate knowledge. That is a knowledge which doesn't require the thought process or process of reasoning. For example, he gives the example, any knowledge we get through our five senses, for him is immediate knowledge. Obviously, a lot of philosophers would deny that. So they are obviously not denying the mediation which go through in the mind through concepts and things. But what the type of mediation they're denying is the mediation which you get in propositional logic, Aristotelian logic, for example, the inference, long drawn out inferences which are not automatic. So five senses, that or something like 2 + 2 is 4, or my awareness that I am, awareness of myself. These are all direct knowledge according to Imam Juwayni here. Now, ilm-zaruri is sometime also, most of time actually, known the ilm al-badihi, that is self-evident knowledge. That's knowledge which is evidence, its own evidence, so it doesn't need any other evidence. So that's ilm al-badi. And generally ilm al-badi and ilm al-zaruri in usul fiqh and related discipline, you will treat them as synonymous terms. But Sayyid al-Sanad al-Sharif Jirjani in his Majmu' Tarbat, he makes a bit of a subtle distinction, and we can look at that. He differentiate or distinguish between al-badi, say al-badi ma la yahtaju ila taqdim muqaddamatin. So that's the same. So he, instead of ma la yaqa, he said ma la yahtaju ila taqdim muqaddima. So the one which doesn't require premises. And premises you require when you require mediation, and through mediation you have conclusion. Because mediate had wasat or middle term is a type of premise as well. So he distinguished between badi and zaruri. So both for him, badi ma la yahtaju ila taqdim muqaddama. So both are, and zaruri also ma la yahtaju fi ila taqdim muqaddama. Both of them are non-inferential knowledge, so they are not knowledge, acquired knowledge according to Juwayni's definition. So they are both ilm zaruri according to Juwayni, but the subtle difference is just from the example. So badihi, the example badihi gives the knowledge of your own self, or knowledge that that the whole is greater than its part. So that he called badi, and daruri is the one acquired through 5 senses. So the distinction, which he doesn't say what's the distinction. He just give the example, because otherwise they're both the same. So the distinction I can see is in badihi, the examples they have given are mostly non-material, and they don't belong to the external world. So self, in a sense, doesn't belong to external world, and the whole is greater than its parts is something abstract as well, or something. On the other hand, the senses. Senses. Most of senses get us knowledge of something external, but it's not really clear. So Sharif Jurjani just divide al-ilm al-daruri, necessary knowledge, from al-ilm al-badihi, that is self-evident knowledge, and they both the same, that they don't require any reflection and process of reasoning. But it seems like the examples he gives of ilm al-daruri are related to 5 senses, and the examples he give of ilm al-badihi are more related to non-material things. Yes. Okay, so now we can move on to the second type, which is easy because it is just the opposite. Al-muktasib, al-ilm al-muktasib, or acquired knowledge. But we want to finish this. Acquired knowledge. So acquired knowledge is the knowledge which require reflection. It does require reflection, argumentation, reasoning, process of reasoning, not just reasoning, process of reasoning. That it's a mediated knowledge. It's non-immediate knowledge. Okay, and for example he gives of that knowledge is that the world is contingent, that is, it came into existence, it wasn't there. So this is your claim. So you can't, this claim is not obvious because people believe that the world is contingent. There are people who believe that the world was, like Aristotle believed that world was eternal, so non-contingent in that sense. So obviously it's not something which is obvious. It's not something which of which we can have immediate knowledge. So then you need a reflection, you need a process of reasoning. So you need to argue, you need to build up premises and then try to see that those premises, whether they have common terms and whether they can lead to conclusion or not. So that would be your al-ilm al-muktasab, acquired knowledge. Now, say Sharif Jurjani uses another term. He said, والاستدلال ما يحتاج إلى تقديم مقدمة كالعلم بالثبوت الثاني وحدوث الأعراض. He just his definition is same, but he uses the term al-ilm al-istidlali. That is argumentative knowledge. And Imam Javani uses al-ilm al-muktasab. So these are synonymous, acquired knowledge. Okay, so There's another term which is used. In fact, it's actually more common. It's called same. They're synonymous with these two, al-ilm al-nazari, theoretical knowledge. Theoretical knowledge. Now, what is left? So we covered that. العلم ضروري ما لا يكون النظر واستدلال وأما العلم المكتسب فهو الموقوف على النظر والاستدلال. And then he defined نظر هو الفكر في المنظور فيه والاستدلال he defined استدلال طلب الدليل, that is it linguistically. And دليل is هو المرشد إلى المطلوب. دليل is anything which leads you to your things you want to establish. That's what evidence is. Then theoretical knowledge itself has its types. Probably we should just stop here and look at them next time. Okay, that's enough.